Hello, everybody, and welcome to our class today on alchemy for personal transformation. I'm Michelle Hawk, and I'm very excited to dive into this with you. Let's go ahead and get our slides up and going. There we go. Okay. I am hoping that you can see that. I actually can't, it says participants can see. So if you can't, then shoot me a message in the chat. Which I also may or may not be able to see now that we're doing screen sharing. How do I move this window out of the way? There we go. All right. Awesome. Alchemy. So today we're talking about alchemy for personal transformation and in terms of practical magic. But before we jump into our content for today, before we jump into all the material, I want to take a moment to turn our awareness inward just for one moment. And if you like, you can close your eyes. And I invite you to put your hands somewhere on your body. Maybe you have a hand on your heart and a hand on your belly. And let's invite ourselves to remember that anything that we're talking about today, it's just words. But what we're talking about is really something that we all innately have access to because these are universal truths. And all of the mysteries of alchemy are universally applicable. They are ancient wisdom. So some part of you already knows this. So before we jump into any teaching mode, any lecture mode, I always invite my students to remember that this knowledge already lives in you and you already have access to this. I'm just helping you remember it more clearly and perhaps gain some insight that you didn't have immediate surface access to at this moment. So inviting the truth of this remembrance to emerge, inviting yourself to remember that alchemy is part of universal law. So it is your birthright here as a child of earth. And taking a few breaths to arrive fully in this moment that is now, arriving in that truth, beginning with the exhale, breathing everything out. And deep breath into the belly. And exhale with a sigh. Again, deep breath into the belly. And exhale with a sigh. Two more, just like that. Deep breath in. And out. One more. Taking a moment just to have some gratitude and appreciation for yourself for being here in this moment that is now, for showing up to this space, to remember more about alchemy, to activate more of this wisdom within yourself. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Give yourself a hug, a little squeeze. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Awesome. So now that we're here, we've arrived. Let's go ahead and talk about alchemy. And as you're coming in, I actually can't see everyone, so if you can go ahead and mute yourself just for our quality purposes. Thank you. Beautiful. All right, so a little bit about me. For those of you who know me, you've probably heard me do this intro a lot. If you don't know me, that's fine. Here I am. My name is Michelle Hawk. I am a longtime student of alchemy, both Western Hermetic, alchemical practice and philosophy, and Eastern Taoist practice in medical qigong and aspects of Chinese medicine. I work in. Let's see if we can mute everyone. There we go. Cool. Yep, gotta keep our call clear. My priority in alchemy for my students and my clients, and also for my personal practice, is not only the philosophy, because it's really easy to kind of go down that rabbit hole of esoteric mysticism that is really fun. Honestly, it's really fun. It's really interesting. It's fascinating, but to translate that into practice and practical application of these mystical technologies, of these spiritual technologies. So I am very grounded in how I talk about alchemy, how I talk about spiritual practice in general. And I emphasize for all of my clients and students practical application. What can you do? How can this be effective in your life? How can this be effective in the world? I am a shamanic and energy medicine practitioner. I've been studying and practicing shamanism for 20 years and an energy medicine for almost as long as that, I guess 16 years now. So it's very much a deep part of my practice to orient toward these mystery schools and bringing healing as a component of alchemy, because alchemy is not necessarily healing, but healing work is an important part of alchemy. Okay, we got more people popping in. Awesome. As people are popping in, go ahead and mute yourself, or I'll mute you. Great, cool. If you're just joining us, I'm just taking a quick moment to introduce myself. And I mentor and train spiritual practitioners in shamanism and alchemy primarily, although I have a vast array of healing and mystical tools at my disposal. I work with people who are in service to others through healing work as mystical practitioners, magical practitioners, coaches. And I also work with non-practitioners who are wanting to master these tools for themselves for their own personal healing and transformation. So thank you for being here with me. Yay. Alchemy. So what you can expect for today, honestly, I think I might have been a little optimistic in allotting an hour for work today, but I'm going to try to keep it efficient and honor your time. But there's just so much, people. It's so good and so deep and so fascinating. But today we're going to talk about alchemy as a modern mystery school, and particularly our relationship to that in the application of ancient wisdom today. Talking about alchemy in science and spiritual practice because they are inexorably linked. Looking at alchemy as practical magic based in universal law, which is one of the reasons why I just love it so much. We're going to talk about what most, quote, transformational guides and healer type people, coaches are missing when they talk about transformation. It's a big one. And we're going to look at the cycle of transformation. I'm going to walk you through the cycle of alchemy, the cycle of transformation. We're going to go just barely kind of scratch the surface a little bit of how it works. We're going to look at one stage in depth that is very emergent, particularly right now in our collective consciousness. We're going to do some practices and exercises with this one stage. And then I'm going to tell you about becoming an alchemist, which is a more in-depth training that I have coming up here in a couple of months, or actually really not that long, like a month and a half or 5 weeks or so. So you can hear more about that and look at how to become an alchemist in your life. All right, so today, alchemy as modern mystery school. I hope this is not in the way. Let's scoot that up there. Okay. Alchemy as modern mystery school. So alchemy is really interesting in that it is the oldest or one of the oldest spiritual traditions. Excuse me. And like over there's all sorts of varying reports as to how old it actually is, but basically we can look at it is sort of tied with the beginnings of human consciousness emerging into understanding of something bigger than ourselves. And really this is kind of where alchemy began. So this is really as old as the questions that humanity has been asking for the entirety of our existence, basically, in trying to understand ourselves, understand the world, understand the divine, and understand our place in the world. So alchemy really came from those questions. And there are roots in ancient Egypt. There are roots in these really ancient civilizations that had very amazing technology. There we are. I'm sorry about that, everybody. Did you just lose me for a couple minutes? Okay. Well, we're back and going to get our screen share back. Just 1 second so we can do our back here. Oh my gosh, come on. Sorry about that, everyone. Thanks for your patience. Okay. All right. Oops. Let's present. Okay, I don't know why this is not letting me share my screen. Share. Present. People, I'm so sorry. Oh, thank you for your patience. Okay, here we go. Is it going? Yay. Okay, that is not the correct slide, but that's okay. I'll go back here. Apparently, I'm having some glitches in my connection, but we're just gonna send some good vibes to keep the internet flowing. All right. Okay, so this ancient mystery school is applicable in our. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're still here. I'm really grateful that you're sticking it out. So hopefully this will work. You know what? I'm just gonna put it on a hotspot on my phone because this is being really dumb. All right. No internet. Now it's connected. All right. Okay, people. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm so sorry about this. This is really. All right. We're gonna take 1 minute. People are leaving. People are coming back. That's fine. I totally get it. I'm going to put this on a hotspot on my phone so that we don't keep dropping this because this is being very silly and I don't really know what to do about it. Hotspot. All right, I think. Great. Okay, hopefully that should solve our problems. Awesome. Okay. So we got all that recorded. We got our fun little issues with the internet recorded, but let's get back to the magic. That's why we're here. Okay. I have been, yeah, I thought I got it all resolved, but I was having some internet issues a while ago, so I guess not. All right. Okay, so this modern mystery school, alchemy, these ancient technologies have informed and had an influence on many traditions that we see, such as shamanism, Kabbalah, Taoism, astrology, tarot, all have roots in alchemy. So it has, as this ancient tradition, it has so many useful applications that can be applied to any situation or person or object or concept of transformation. It's really the blueprint of transformation. And it can, as we're translating these ancient teachings into modern applications, because it is so foundational in its wisdom, that's why it is so universally applicable and so easily applicable, which I really love about alchemy. Another reason I love alchemy so much, and you're going to hear a lot of these because there's a lot of reasons I love alchemy, is that it is the intersection of science and spiritual practice. So in pop culture, a lot of people know of alchemy as turning lead into gold, which is, you know, we see it in video games and in movies, etc. And that was part of it in the original Alchemist. That was part of the quest, was to discover the nature of elemental composition and to move metals, in this case lead, in through this process of evolution and purification until it became gold as this enlightened version of itself. But really that was the physical representation as a metaphor and as a representation for the spiritual journey of the practitioner, because the physical process is inseparable from the internal process. So as we are working out alchemy outside of ourselves, we are working alchemy inside of ourselves. But what this led to, what happened as alchemists were isolating elements and investigating the composition of the material world, investigating the composition of metals and of plants and of human bodies, that is where alchemy turned into what is now modern medicine and chemistry. They even share the same root of the word chem. Modern physics, psychology is rooted in alchemy. Because remember, alchemy was essentially humanity asking questions about the truth of nature and ourselves and our own true nature. So now we had this big divergence, which we're not going to really go into today, but there was this big separation at some point between the spiritual and the scientific aspects of alchemy. But for a very, very long time, for many, many thousands of years, they were related and inseparable from each other. And so as a result, we have these precise spiritual technologies that operate on all levels because alchemy is based in science. It's based in material world and based in molecular composition and based in the process, the chemical process of what happens when we're putting materials through this process of transformation. So as we're using these spiritual technologies, they're working on the body, they're working on the heart, they're working on the mind, they're working on the spiritual level, they're working on the ancestral level, because it is these universally applicable set of tools that are based in physics, basically. Okay. It's asking me about Zoom chat. Oh no, go back. All right. So I've mentioned universal law a few times, actually. These, the teachings of alchemy are based in universal law, as I mentioned, where it's this investigation of the natural world. And so as the alchemists were, plotting the trajectory of planets in the sky and looking at the movement of stars and looking at the seasons and looking at the behavior of elements in relationship to each other, right? Looking at patterns, it's pattern recognition in nature and in ourselves and in the human psyche. And that is why alchemy is universally applicable, is because it is based in the laws of nature, right? It's not based in something that humanity made up. And so, in order to master transformation, we master those codes, we master our understanding of the laws. And this is how we can proactively collaborate with transformation rather than feeling like we're being dragged around by the ear doing something that we don't want to do. Or, as my astrologer friend likes to say, choose change before change chooses you. And that's what's possible with alchemy, that rather than feeling like we're pushed into transformation when we don't really want to, we get to collaborate with the universe, collaborate with spirit, collaborate with ourselves in this process of transformation and creation. All right, so this is the thing that I mentioned, that most quote transfer, and I keep doing this on purpose, the quote on purpose, because a lot of transformational guides are missing this really important piece about transformation. And that piece is that unless you proactively seek it out, no one actually teaches you how transformation works, right? Like, it's not like, growing up, most of us could expect that someone at some point would teach us how to tie our shoes, right? Like, that's sort of a kid rite of passage, that they have the little laces, and there's something that, like, the bunny goes in the hole and the fox, right? Like, there's a little story with it, and it's broken down into accessible steps, right? Or if you grew up and you learned how to drive a car, I know not everyone drives a car, not everyone has a car, right? But that would be a comparable analogy of, rather than putting you in a car and saying, okay, go to the store and get some eggs, right? Like, before you're just sort of sent off on your own, someone walks you through, okay, this pedal is the gas and this is the brake and this is how to change gears and this is what all of these signs mean, right? You're set up for success so that you can operate this this process, right? But with alchemy and with transformation, people just sort of assume that it, I guess, I should probably ask people, what do they assume about transformation? I have asked people this before, and most people are like, oh, I focus on what I want and then it comes about in my life, which is what most people think about in transformation, is focusing on law of attraction or focusing on your mindset or focusing on changing habits, right? And that, as we'll see in the cycle of transformation, that is an important part of the cycle of transformation, but it's a tiny, tiny part, right? And so the missing key is that most transformational work, quote, transformational work, only focuses on one small part of the alchemical cycle. And it doesn't integrate into all levels because either people aren't a lot of this focus is on like the mental emotional layer, but they're not integrating into the body, or they're not working in the spiritual realms, or they're not working in the etheric bodies. So this is what I see as missing in a lot of the quote transformational work out there. You're going to see when we get into the cycle of transformation what I'm talking about. And it's to people's detriment. It's a bummer because, deep transformation is possible and these tools do exist. I'm showing you some of them right now. All right, so here we're going to get into the cycle of transformation, and I broke it down into, this is where my very happy visual brain was going last night as I was making these slides. So don't worry, it's all going to be very clearly broken down for you. That as we're working with a cycle of transformation, we're looking at 3 phases. It's one complete cycle, but it is composed of 3 phases of overall energies. In those 3 phases, there are 7 stages of specific energies. And each stage holds particular gifts and initiations, as well as challenges and opportunities challenges where people can get stuck, and opportunities for people to claim the gifts of this particular stage. So it looks like this. Okay, so if you want to draw this, you can. I'm going to add the components as we go. So here we have our 3 phases. Remember, we talked about our 3 phases. Here's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And here's what they're called. So first we have the death phase. And here I have it going down this way because you can imagine death as contracting energy, right? So death is the first phase. Purification is the second phase. And rebirth is the third phase. Now remember, we have 7 stages, which we're going to add to our graphic here. So our 7 stages of the energy. There are 2 stages in the death phase, 2 stages in the purification phase, and 3 stages in the rebirth phase. And the first one, we're not using, I'm intentionally not using the technical names of the alchemical stages in this because it can get a little confusing because most people don't know these terms off the top of their head. So we're using the primary energy as to distinguish the stages. So the first stage of the death phase is about destruction. And specifically, it's about releasing form. It's about burning, awakening, activating death, whether literal or figurative death. This is an example of people losing their jobs, people losing their homes, people having catastrophic accidents, near-death experiences. And people can get stuck in this, right? Because we look at every stage has somewhere that people can get stuck. People can get stuck in like never moving out of the trauma of that death experience, right? Like some people can get stuck in shock. People can get stuck in continuous cleansing, right? Some of this comes up in medicine work. If people are doing medicine work or doing some very deep healing work, and they're stuck in feeling like I have to release, right? So that can be kind of a temptation for people to get stuck in this permanent destroying, releasing, and not moving on to the next stage. So destruction, it's pretty uncomfortable as it sounds, right? Whenever I teach this to people, it's people are like, oh, that was really not my favorite phase or not my favorite stage, but I get why it's super important. Because if we don't release forms, right? If we're not inviting in death, then we never get rid of old energy. And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Our next stage of alchemy, which is also in the death phase, we're just going along the circle, is about dissolving. And so while the first part, destruction, is about releasing form, the second part of the death phase is about releasing energy, and particularly energetic and emotional structures. So imagine in the destruction part, if we're looking at destruction as had a near death experience, right? So then the dissolving piece would be processing the energetic and emotional architecture of that in terms of grieving former identity, in terms of processing emotion of shock and fear and anger and guilt and frustration, whatever it might be, out of the body and out of the field, and releasing old aspects of yourself. Or say, in say you lost your job, right? That's the destruction piece that we're looking at. Okay, so then dissolving, releasing the energy of failure, releasing energy of former identity, or releasing obligation, or whatever it is. It's the releasing of all of the etheric body structures. And we're going to talk about that later. So as we get into the purification phase, our next stage is analysis. So this is one of the areas where most quote transformational work focuses and misses other pieces, but they focus on analysis, because in the purification phase, we're looking at perspective and discernment. Okay, what do you want in your life? This is where we start asking those questions of what do you want to keep and what do you want to get rid of? So in destruction, we were releasing all the forms. In dissolving, we're surrendering, right? We're releasing, we're working in the subconscious, where we're freeing up emotional energy. And then when you get into analysis, it's like, okay, well, what do I want to keep and what do I want to get rid of? What do I want to maintain about my life and what do I want to throw out? What habits do I want to change? Right? Okay, now that I lost my job and I cleared my energy about it, what do I want in a job moving forward? Or what skills am I really happy that I'm taking away from my previous job, and what am I really grateful for, and what do I know that I definitely don't want in my next job? Right? So we're bringing in some of the mind. This is where the mind comes into play. And again, a lot of the quote transformational work out there focuses a lot on mindset. Again, not that that's a bad thing, and there's a lot of power to the mind, but it's again only a really small portion of the cycle of transformation. The next stage in the purification phase is about reformation, and this is the other piece where a lot of quote transformational work focuses. They hang out in the purification phase, and reformation is about building new structures. This is about what is the next version of what you're building, right? So say, for example, you lost your job in destruction, you dissolved, you released your identity and attachments to that. You analyzed of like, okay, what do I want to keep? What do I want to get rid of? What do I want in a job moving forward? And now in reformation, you're building new structures. Okay, you're talking with your network, you're redoing your resume, you're writing your wish list for your job, and you're starting to go on interviews. Or in if we look at the reformation, it's putting back together and it's grounding, it's re-embodying, and it's a base form. So this is a piece where if we're not careful, we get stuck in a base form and it's not an elevated form. So in our near-death experience example, since we got a couple different flavors of example, destruction, you have your accident. Dissolving, you're releasing your identity pieces. Analysis, okay, what am I learning about this, about who I am? What do I want my life to look like moving forward? How can I release dangerous or destructive or adrenaline seeking habits? Or what forgiveness do I need to offer for this accident? Then reformation, okay, so now I'm in my healing, I'm putting my life back together, I'm in a process of physically healing, I'm going into physical therapy, right? So we have this building of new structures, but they're still base level structures. So again, in the pop culture mindset coaching world that talks about transformation but isn't always actual transformation, we see people analyze and say, okay, we're going to talk about what you want and focus about what you want, and then put some things into practice, but they never reach the rebirth phase, or most of them don't. So let's look at that. Because this next stage, which is the first one of the rebirth phase, is about reanimation. And it's bringing these new structures to life. It's reconnecting them to spirit. And it's saying, okay, so now that you have this base form, it's still it's a form, but it's like it's like a little Play-Doh figure, but you have to bake it and reactivate and paint it. You have to finish it. It's not done. So in the reanimation stage, this is where you're reconnecting to divine energy. You're plugging this version of yourself back into connection with spirit. You're anchoring in divine consciousness. You're receiving, receiving a lot of vitality. You're increasing and cultivating vitality in the reanimation stage. The essence stage, this is where you have this structure, you've done your healing work, you've healed and moved into a new expression of your life, and now you're distilling to that core truth. This is the essence, where you're saying, okay, well, this is the the truth of who I am in this iteration of this moment in my life, and this is what I understand about myself now that I'm living that, and I'm connected, and I'm full of life, and I'm empowered, and I'm embodied in my presence, full presence of who I am. This is the essence piece. And then lastly, we get to actualization. So this is the 7th stage of alchemy, which is about completion and expression. And this is radiance. This is the, coming to a full cycle of alchemy through this. The cycle of transformation is about radiant being. It's simply being who you are, and your beingness as the expression of having been through this complete cycle. Because then, and I'm sure you can guess, you go back through it again. And this cycle of transformation is continuous. We all go through many stages of this cycle of transformation throughout our lives. It's not linear, right? Like, it is totally possible for somebody to say, okay, I'm going through this destruction experience and I get up to analysis, but then something happens and I get back down to destruction, or to be in kind of a like analysis and reformation at the same time, because you're thinking about what you want, you're putting it into practice, right? Like, that is possible. We're looking at it in sort of a little bit of a linear way, and it doesn't actually work like that in our life. But when we can look at it and understand the pieces of it, then we can apply the gifts of each stage to our own personal experience, which is what we want. And we can invite ourselves to deepen in transformation. So we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about one of these stages, because I think it's really important. Where should I put this? Let's put this video over here. I think it's really important. And I think it's, as I said, one of the pieces, one of the many pieces, several pieces that I see really missing in our pop culture transformation work. And we're going to talk about dissolution, which is that dissolving stage. So let's go back to our graphic over here, and we can look at, so this is the one we're talking about right here. And it's the second of the 2 death stages. And its official name is dissolution, is the name of that stage. So dissolution, as we mentioned, this is one of the death stages, and it's particularly the death of energetic and emotional structures. It is very strongly associated with the energy and the emotion of grief. So as I mentioned, in these particular examples where, someone has a near-death experience, someone loses their job, someone has loses a loved one, or ends a relationship, or loses a home, or even just like getting rid of an object that you like, right? Like, that can also be a death process, and the emotional release that accompanies that is dissolution process. Now, again, we have smaller aspects of that. So like, say for example, you're getting rid of an outfit that you really like that doesn't fit you anymore, right? And it like makes you feel a little sad that, oh, I'm not the same size as I was when I was like 20 years old, right? And you're just, you have a little bit of emotion about that, but then you're like, well, someone else will enjoy it and someone else will love it, right? So we have kind of this smaller version of dissolution, and then we have really big dissolution, but it's all the same energy. So we have really big dissolution, like in the world, where we're seeing so many people reeling from traumatic events and developmental trauma, or environmental crises, or socio-political injustice, living in systems of oppression, racial trauma, inherited ancestral trauma, all of this, right? It's all the same energy, right? Like, keep that in mind. Even though the expression of it might be very, very different, and it might come from different sources, the energy of it is the same, because it's about the death and release of these energetic and emotional structures. It's grief work. It's releasing hidden, trapped emotion, and it's clearing the subconscious. So it's this dissolving. It's surrender into the subconscious. It's releasing attachment. We're going to talk about crystallized versus dynamic attachment in just one second. But before we do that, let's look at conscious and subconscious mind, because I just said that dissolution is about clearing the subconscious. So our subconscious mind is basically everything that's running behind the scenes that we're not actually paying attention to. So it's our conditioned beliefs and pathways, it's our instinct, and subconscious can be both positive and negative and neutral, right? So we often hear of subconscious as with a negative connotation, where it's suppressed shadow in looking at it through the psychological lens, or like hidden suppressed aspects of ourself. But also we can have positive subconscious, in the background of like, maybe part of your subconscious, if you had a great relationship with your parents growing up, is that you are safe and you are cared for. And that's part of your subconscious programming, is I am loved and the world is a safe place. Right. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people have developmental trauma where their subconscious is telling them that the world is not a safe place. Right. But you see, it can go either way. It's your programming in the background, whatever is under the surface. And just to give you an idea of the power of your subconscious, and also your subconscious includes any inherited karma or belief systems, epigenetic stuff, ancestral trauma also included in your subconscious. To give you an idea of how potent in this, your conscious mind processes 40 bits of data per second, 40 bits of data per second. And I know that sounds like a lot. And the subconscious, I on purpose didn't put it on the slide for dramatic effect. Your subconscious mind processes 40 billion bits of data per second. So again, your conscious mind, 40 bits of data per second. That is a lot. But your subconscious is 40 billion bits of data. So your subconscious is 1 billion times more active and powerful than your conscious mind. And again, if we're working on mindset, like that's a lot of conscious mind stuff. Okay. So remember, the piece that most transformational work is missing, as long as they're working in mindset and they're working in analysis, that's all conscious brain. That's in this little tiny part of our mind. But the subconscious, where our emotions are stored and crystallized or processed, where we're working with our inherited systems and structures, that is 1 billion times more powerful. So working in dissolution, which operates in the realm of the subconscious, is fundamentally necessary for any transformational work. And unfortunately, it gets glossed over a lot or even ignored completely. So crystallized versus dynamic attachment. In dissolution, we're not getting rid of all attachment. I know I mentioned something about surrendering and releasing attachment, but we are we are getting rid of fixed and crystallized attachment, that because as soon as something becomes fixed, it is no longer alive. As soon as it becomes crystallized, it is static and it is dead and it is sucking energy. But when attachment, we can look at healthy attachment, right? Like our healthy, thriving relationships. This is an example of dynamic attachment, or attachment to a project that we're working on where we're really invested in its success, or attachment to our dog or our kid or whatever it is, or attachment to parts of ourself that are thriving and growing and changing. These are volatile attachments. They don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to get stuck in the void of dissolution. That's not the point of dissolution. The point is to release the trapped and crystallized emotional and energetic attachments. So let's look at dissolution in the world. Gotta move my thing again. Dissolution in the world. As I mentioned, dissolution I see as something that is really deeply needed for our planetary healing right now. Because again, we have so much coming to the surface in terms of COVID and in terms of our political upheaval and environmental upheaval and the wealth gap and systems of oppression and all of this. And there's so much collective grief and collective rage and collective trauma and collective dissociation that's happening all in the world. And I mean, we see so many examples of people just being on a hair trigger and people freaking out at each other. And so it is very, very obvious that there's a lot of hidden, trapped emotion and collective trauma that is both lived in this moment, in this lifetime, in the bodies that we live in now, and also inherited through the ancestral record, unfortunately. Because until it is cleared from the line, until it is cleared from the body, it just keeps getting passed down and passed down and passed down. So part of dissolution is about healing and transmuting this trauma, both for ourselves personally and also on a planetary level, through clearing ancestral karma and through using dissolution and using our understanding of this to create safety and compassion, even in uncertain times, even in places where we don't know all the answers. And using dissolution, using our awareness of the cycle of transformation to unwind the collective distortion fields and egregores, which are these, these energetic conglomerates of energy and consciousness that kind of take on their own life force. So just because these systems and these egregores and these fields exist in the world doesn't mean that they're true. There are so many very distorted and very unhealthy fields in the world, so it can feel like we're getting sucked into the inevitability of doom. And I don't know about you, but I see a lot of things that lend themselves to that thought process of being sucked into the inevitability of doom. And so dissolution is the way that we dissolve that in ourselves, in our bodies, in our personal experience, and the way that we can anchor that in for the world. So we're going to do a couple of practices for dissolution, and I'm going to show you these two practices that are quite lovely. The first of which is actually also really good for COVID. So if you have COVID or you already had COVID, this one works on that because it works in the lung channels. So practices for dissolution. I'm going to take this off actually so you can see what I'm doing. Because we're working in the lung channels, because the lungs are the seat of grief in the body. So this is coming from Chinese medicine practice, right? Where we're working in these channels that go all the way down the thumb side of the arm. So all the way from your thumb up the inside of your arm to the inside of the shoulder right here. So I want you to start by taking your fingers of one hand and kind of put them in this little pocket in front of the head of the humerus here, which is that big round bone right there. And I want you to kind of feel around, poke around in this little gap right here and find a spot that's really tender. And I can pretty much guarantee you it will feel tender. And when you get there, really like poke at it and massage into it and take some deep breaths into it, because this is a big point on the lung channels. And use some breaths when you get in there. Nice deep breaths as you're massaging this tender point in the lung channels. And if you do this long enough, you might actually feel some energy coming up. You might feel some grief coming up, because again, the lungs are the seat of grief in the body. So when we work on clearing the lung channels, we're clearing hidden, trapped emotion and grief in particular from the body. So you can imagine also the color is bright white, like not nice soft white. It's like bright, like titanium white, super metallic, brilliant, hurt your eyes white with this channel as well. So you can imagine this nice white light filling this point, and the sound is sh or sha. So you can use that breath as well as you're massaging with your bright white light. Sha. To clear the lung channels. And then you're going to use your hand, because you kind of moved all this stuff around, right? So you're going to squeeze down the thumb side of your arm all the way down and pull it out the thumb. And you can snap to release it. And my dog is moving the computer. Hey. And so you can, again, pull the energy all the way down the thumb side of the arm, pull it out the thumb, and snap to clear it. You're sweeping and clearing the lung channels. And now we'll do the other side. So again, finding that little gap right in front of the shoulder, or finding that little nook, digging on in there. And you might notice that one side's a little more tender than the other. Yeah. And using your breaths when you get in and find that tender place, and visualizing that bright white light and using your breath. Sha. And feeling it alleviate a little bit as you're doing this. Knowing that you're moving grief, you're moving stuck emotion, and you're inviting that stuck emotion to be freed up, to get cleared. Maybe you know what it's about, maybe you don't. You don't always have to, it's okay. And then when you're ready, go ahead and use this hand to pull all the way down the thumb side of the arm, out the thumb, and snap to release it again. Pulling that energy all the way down the thumb side and out the thumb. And one more time. Good. Then you can go ahead and just give yourself like nice light little trails of beautiful white light down the lung channels, bathing the lung channels in healthy, beautiful, glowing white light. Very nice. Okay, so that was your first practice for dissolution. And your next practice for dissolution, you can do a very long version of this. We're going to do a very short version of this. And it's called the Bain Marie meditation. And the Bain Marie meditation is about the dissolving of that crystallized emotion. So I invite you to go ahead and close your eyes or use soft gaze if you would like, so you can leave your eyes open. And just do that 1,000-yard gaze, wide angle vision, or close your eyes. And we're going to once again drop in with the breath. And I invite you to imagine that you are walking along or sitting on the beach. An ocean beach specifically. And as you're on the beach, you are observing the rhythm of the waves coming in. Maybe they're touching your toes where you are on the sand, and then washing back out. And I invite you to do this with your breath. On the inhale, you're imagining that that water is washing through you and dissolving away all of the crystallized emotion and thought forms. And then on the exhale, that wave is carrying all of that dissolved crystal back out to the ocean. And in alchemy, they look at the salt in tears as being the dissolved emotions. And so the ocean, which has that same dissolved salt in it, is very good at helping us dissolve these crystallized thought forms, emotion, energy, hidden, stuck, trapped things that are ready to go. So using the breath with the waves washing in and out. You don't have to know what is being carried away. Allow it to wash through and surrender. Knowing that whatever you are releasing, it is ready to go. And it is impossible to lose something that you're not ready to release, or something that is supposed to stay with you. So you don't have to worry about something leaving that you're not ready for. Whatever is washing away is something that is ready to go. And if you feel emotion rising during this practice, then allow it to do so. Allow it to flow through you, because as it flows, it moves. As it flows, it is dynamic and it is alive. And allowing the waves to wash through you will help it move, help it dissolve, and help it be released. Do 2 more breaths here. Allowing yourself to come to stillness. Continue to flow with your breath, but now you've stepped back from the waves. Giving a little internal bow of gratitude and acknowledgement to yourself for taking space and time for this practice today. Thank you, thank you, thank you to these beautiful energies of dissolution for supporting us in this work. Thank you. And knowing that you can return here anytime to play with these practices more for yourself, go ahead and gently land back in conscious awareness in this moment that is now. When you're ready, wiggling your fingers and toes, fluttering the eyelids, and open your eyes. Wonderful. So obviously you can do that for as long as you want, and that's a really nice practice to settle in and do for a longer time. But for now, we're going to go ahead and wrap up with talking about becoming an alchemist. Now, this that we talked about today is really, as I said, it's barely scratching the surface, honestly. I've been studying alchemy and practicing alchemy for years now, and there is still so much that I am learning and growing as I'm evolving in this practice. So, as I'm sure you can imagine, there's definitely a lot here, but it is incredibly important and valuable, and it is hands down the best set of healing tools and practices that I have found, because it teaches you how transformation actually works. And alchemy is the nature by which we create transformation, which is the basis of all healing and all becoming and evolving in the world. So I put together, I do have, for those of you who know me and know this already, I do have a year-long apprenticeship on alchemy training, but it's quite a big jump to go into a year. So I created this, which is Becoming an Alchemist, that is focused on awakening, embodying, and integrating alchemy into your life. And Becoming an Alchemist is, it's a mini course. And in this course, you will awaken your alchemical remembrance. You learn how to collaborate with powerful cosmic cycles. You master the cycle of transformation. So we go more in depth into the cycle that we already talked about today. You transmute alchemy through the body. Again, we just did a little tiny taster of that, but we do much more of that in this course. You practice alchemical ceremonies and rituals, and you integrate alchemy into your life and your practice. So this is the Becoming an Alchemist course. Here's the page. I will also send this out in our email, and I'll post it in the video information so you can find that. This course, Becoming an Alchemist, includes 5 alchemy training modules that include mystical teachings, energetic and ritual practices, and I will be recording these live. But you'll get lifetime access to the materials and be able to review them as much as you want. It also includes 5 alchemy rituals, including transmissions, journey, and visioning ceremony. So this is 5 trainings and then 5 rituals to put it into practice, as well as your online classroom and curated community of like-hearted seekers. And Becoming an Alchemist begins October 13th of 2022. In case I use this video for something else at a future date, which I may or may not do, depending because of all of our technical glitches at the beginning. If you're watching this later in time, then just check out my website and see what the dates are for the Becoming an Alchemist course. But for you, since you're here live, I would like to offer you a $50 discount code that is valid for 48 hours. So your investment for this course is $497 when paid in full, or you have 2 payments of $277 But if you'd like to use your discount code, they both are $50 discount code, but I had to make two different options because one of them's pay in full and one of them is a recurring payment option, but they're both for $50. So Alchemy 50 for your pay in full $50 discount, or Alchemy 22 for your two payment $50 discount. And again, the site for that is michellehawk.com, which is my website. And you can just go on there and find the Becoming an Alchemist option, or it's becoming-an-alchemist. And that is all, people. So I would love to hear, how did that go for you? Any questions, epiphanies, intrigues? Let's open up for Q&A if there's anything that you'd like to share. Or you can put it in the chat box.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, I can hear you.
Hi. So I'm interested in your training. So you don't do anything with the full moon, do you? Like, I'm just asking, like, kind of like your own like personal beliefs, if you don't mind. Of course, it's not business.
My personal beliefs. Do I do anything with the full moon?
Yeah, you know, stuff with like different gods and goddesses.
Working with the lunar cycle is a part of my practice, both personally and what I teach with my students. Yes, and looking at the lunar cycle is a component of what we would talk about in the cosmic cycles module of the Becoming an Alchemist course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Mm-hmm. And do you use like different tools like Palo Santo, Sassafras?
I don't talk about the tools so much in this course. I do use some tools and plant medicines. That is not part of what I teach in Becoming an Alchemist.
More about like the mind, huh?
Not so much about the mind, but more about the particular spiritual technologies that are not really dependent on physical objects. Just for the purposes of this particular training, rather than assigning someone, okay, you have to go out and buy all this stuff, I'm going to be teaching spiritual tools and technologies that anyone can do without needing to have any materials. Right. So when we're looking at, we're looking at the cycle of transformation. Okay, we're going to talk about the cycle of transformation and give you specific practices, meditation practices, movement practices, ritual practices, journey practices to work with those so that anyone can do it regardless of what materials they have.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Either about the training or about, oh, thanks, Teresa. I'm glad you were here. It is a good substitute for one-on-one live sessions. Is this a good substitute for one-on-one live sessions? Do you mean like instead of working with me one-on-one for mentorship? Yes. I would say they do completely different things. So is this Susie who I talked with earlier today, actually? No. Okay. I did speak with a Susie earlier today where we were talking about some one-on-one work. So different Suzanne. Hi. I would say they do completely different things. The one-on-one work that I do is very tailored to individual needs or journey. And I do draw on some of these tools and teachings for an individual journey, and yet with the one-on-one work, it's entirely about you and your process. Where are you going? What do you need? What do you need right now? Having me 100% in your corner. This course, Becoming an Alchemist, it's also focused on your personal journey, but you're not getting any of my one-on-one attention. You're getting attention for me to answer during class time, or for me to answer outside of class time via our online classroom portal, but you don't have the in-depth access. However, it is a really wonderful investigation and very wonderful training into some of these foundational transformational tools that you will be able to apply to your own process. So I would say, no, it is not a good substitute for one-on-one live sessions because they do completely different things. Does that make sense?
Do you offer that?
Offer one-on-one?
Yeah, or happen to know anybody? I don't know anybody who I can actually trust.
I do offer one-on-one sessions. Yeah. And so if that's something that you're curious about or interested in, we can set up a time to talk about that if you like. And I'm just checking back in the chat. Suzanne is saying, how long are sessions each week? You mean for the training, the Becoming an Alchemist training? Yes, those are 75 to 90 minutes or so. And there are 5 of them. Yeah. And then the ritual practices are on your own time. I'm giving you the tools to set up the ritual practice, and then you do the ritual on your own time. And that can take as long or as little as you want it to. Yeah, Suzanne, did I answer all your questions in the chat? I'm guessing so. Okay. Yep. Oh, awesome. And then Cher, yes, you're asking about one-on-one work. I do offer one-on-one mentorship and healing work, and that is also on my website, michellehawk.com, and it's called Transformational Mentorship. So if you are inclined to go on there, then you can go ahead and check that out. So for all of you who joined live today, again, if you have any other questions, please feel free to either email me. You can email me, michelle@joyofenergy.com, or you can contact me through my website, michellehawk.com, or yeah, those would be the 2 ways to get a hold of me. But if you are interested in the Becoming an Alchemist course, again, since you're here, I would love to offer you that $50 discount that is valid for 48 hours. I will, when I'm sending out the email to follow up this live, and I'm sorry about all the technical glitches at the beginning. Thank you for sticking with it. Thank you for staying here. I'm so grateful. But I will put that information in there as well. But you can go to my website and find the Becoming an Alchemist course and use your code for your $50 discount. So thank you so much. I hope that you got something valuable out of this class today. I hope that you enjoyed it. Alchemy is so, I mean, I love it so much. Honestly, I love alchemy. And I feel very passionate about sharing it with other people because, as I said, I do firmly believe that this is the most powerful set of transformational tools available to us. And I want you to have that. So if you decide that you want more alchemy in your life, then let me know and I am here to help. All right, y'all. Well, thank you for being here. That's it for today, but happy integration and I will see you next time.